you haven't already, go into your model and put all the final touches. Make sure it's pretty and perfect, because in this video we will be marking seams on the edges we would like the UV unwrap to cut from. As you can see, I do some final touches on the eye. I wasn't completely happy with it, but some simple tweaks and modifications fixed that. So when we select the edges for our UV unwrap, or that we will be marking the seams, we want to focus on the edges that would allow the mesh to lay flattest. In this case, I always select the edges on the base of the fur extrusion, because that will allow me to modify that fur separately and individually a lot easier. I also think separating the arms and the legs from the body mesh is a good idea, because it allows me to texture each of them individually and as precisely as I choose. I speed through this video because I'm mostly just selecting edges, and you're more than welcome to select the same edges I select. I would encourage you to. Some of them are not quite visible, so you might need to go into the Shift Z. I don't know what the hotkey is for you guys, but it slightly gives an X-ray mode to your mesh, and you're able to select the underlying mesh behind the faces. As you go, you are more than welcome to mark seams after you select the edge loop or edge. I just decided to select all of them first, and it took a little planning. So whenever you select the edges around the base of the hip or the base of the hind leg, you don't want to just leave the leg a cylinder without any cuts on it, because that will not unfold properly. You will have an ugly unwrap, but you fix that by selecting edges down the side of the leg and making sure they all end and cut off nicely. And this will create seams in our texture when we apply it, but I will fix that, or we will fix that later in this video. In this tutorial series, I will not teach you how to do the base texture for this mesh. I'm not the greatest texture artist, so I don't feel like that's my place of expertise. You could probably find a better video that would do a better job, but I will teach you how to fix seams and how to use Blender's paintbrushes to texture and modify a pre-existing texture. Alright, so it all looks pretty good, and the last step that we haven't quite done yet is select the edges around the the claws. And we have to do this so that there is minimal stretching on the UV map, and stretching causes your texture to look a little bit funky. So yeah, we gotta make sure we select all the edges that need to be cut where it would prevent stretching. And though this unwrap will cause a little bit stretching, it does a pretty good job for the most part, so no worries. If you're following along edge by edge, then good for you. You'll have a decent unwrap. So it turns out I had more geometry than I actually needed, and hopefully you guys don't have this geometry, but I just ended up deleting the faces, for they didn't serve a purpose really. Even if you have marked all the seams on your mesh and you still would like to put final touches in, you're more than welcome to. It won't really affect a thing. But after that, we should begin with the unwrap. So you do so by selecting either all the faces, all the edges, or all the vertices, and you click on U and you select the unwrap. On the bottom left of the tools menu in the left side of the screen, you see a margin, and we will adjust that slightly so that each island or each section of the UV unwrap will have more space around it. This will make it a lot easier to texture in Photoshop. This blue and green color just shows all the stretching that occurs in the mesh. And yeah, it's got a little bit of stretch, but nothing too drastic. We can work with this, and it won't look bad at all. I may have gotten a little ahead of myself, but now we adjust the margin, and as you can see, the each island or separate UV shell gets more space around it. And that looks like enough space for me to do what I want, so I'm gonna save this UV unwrap. You might want to slow it down at this part. On the bottom tab menu, you scroll to the right and there's this button. It allows you to live select vertices, which we're doing right now, and it shows you exactly where they're placed on the mesh. So if you want to know what you're selecting and what side of the mesh each vertex is, you click on the button C while in the UV image editor, and you get this brush that you can drag on, and it will select vertices. So now would be a good time to pause, because I went into Photoshop and I did all the texturing, and now I'm going to teach you how to fix it. Alright, so by now you should have done the texturing in Photoshop, and you should have a PNG ready for import. I'm going to show you all how to do that. So you select on your mesh, and and then first you got to make sure the render is in cycle renderer. Then you go into the material tab, you create a new material, and then you open up the file you exported from Photoshop or whatever texturing program you used. And as you notice, there are a lot of seams that we don't really want or like. So we're going to be fixing that, and you do that by changing from object mode into texture paint mode, and then you select on the brush F smear. And there are many brushes that we could use, and you should try them out if you think you might need them, but this is the one we're going to use to clear out those seams. And you just drag across those seams, and it should do some smearing, and it works fairly well for getting rid of the seams. And I also had some little lines that I needed to get rid of, and I just smeared them away. Worked pretty well. But for the most of the end of this video, I'm going to just be smearing the seams, so I won't be talking that much, but every now and then when I think of something that I need to say, I'll just throw it out there. Alright, so when we're doing this, this does not update the this does update the PNG, but it does not save the PNG that you imported that we're smearing. So when you're completely finished with all of the smearing of the seams, you got to make sure that you save the PNG as save over the PNG that you imported. And at the end of this video, I will do this, and I'll show you how to do it. But yeah, if you just hit save and then exit out of the program, if you exit out of Blender, then when you reopen the file, the texture smear will not have been saved, and you'll have to redo it all. I learned this the hard way. Yeah, I tried it out, and I was like, oh no, it didn't save. So yeah, this is my second time doing this actually. I tried to get in every seam that I possibly could remember. And yeah, I also noticed that near the stomach of a wolf, the fur doesn't go like sideways, it goes downwards. So I also modified that using the smear brush in Blender. And I think it turned out pretty nice. So with this texture on the extrusions of the edges where we created the mesh for the fur, you should have some transparency, and that's what the white is. If you see the end of the fur mesh or geometry, you see that there's white there, and that should be transparent. So I hope you did that in your Photoshop texture. If not, it's pretty easy to do. You go back and change that and smear some fur texture over there. It's also good to note that if you use the smear brush and you accidentally smear on the transparent, like you see how close the edge that I need to smear is to the transparent. If I accidentally smear on the transparent, then it will actually create color there, and we don't want that. So I try my best to avoid smearing over it. I just stick to the bounds. It's like coloring in the lines. I think you guys should be able to do it. Always got to double check, make sure you didn't miss anything. Otherwise you'll have to go back and do it again. Alright, so now I'm going into the UV image editor in a new view, and I select on the image that I imported for the material, and I'm looking at it, and I can see that the texture has changed since I've imported it. So I'm gonna need to save this image over the existing one. But if you want to keep the existing one, then you can save it as a new image. But yeah, this is the most important step of this. So you can either do save as image or save image, Alt S. And in my case, I just did save image, and that overrid it. So it's all good now. You can exit the program, and you should be able to open it back up, and the texture will be the same. It will be seamless. But yeah, that's the end of this video. I have a few more coming, so be ready. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys are following along pretty well. Remember to leave a comment or any kind of suggestion in the comments. Yeah.